Welcome to Traders Corner. As most of you probably know by now, Garth McKenzie starts the year with a 250,000 Rand lump sum of his own cash, which he uses to trade with the aim of donating any profits at the end of the year to charity. Let's take a look at how much we had in the kitty to give this year. While the JSE's had a decidedly patchy year, 2015 marked another set of stellar returns, 42.5% or a gain of 105,000 Rand before tax. This year, founder Garth McKenzie decided to split the portfolio's haul between three familiar charities: Princess Alice Adoption Home, the Gerald Fitzpatrick Home for the Elderly, and Ripple Reading, a volunteer-assisted program which helps jumpstart reading skills amongst underprivileged children in Johannesburg's north. Founded by businesswoman Rihanna Robinson, the school takes in youngsters with little to no reading skills, boosting literacy and developing their potential. It's a haven for children to revel, read and learn, and it's scored some spectacular successes. And on the subject of successes, since we began the show in 2009, Traders Corner has been able to donate about 500,000 Rand to charity, thanks to some canny trades, discipline and a little luck. Well, Garth joins me now in studio. Garth, well done. Nice to have a decent pot of money to give, even though I suppose towards the end of the year, as viewers would have seen, trade did slow for the portfolio somewhat.
Yeah, very much so. It's been a good year all told, but most of our profits were actually made in the first half of this year. About 3/4 of our trading profit, in fact, was made in the first half of the year, and only 1/4 of our trading profits were made in the latter half of this year. And you'll see that as we unpack these statistics for the year to date. Definitely, it's been a difficult year, actually. Although we've done well on the portfolio, it's actually been, I found it a difficult year. Last week on the show, I showed a chart of the top 40 looking at 2011 versus 2015 and how similar the years have been. And 2011 was one of my most difficult years ever in terms of trading. And 2015, it has been as difficult, but I think we've done better in terms of how we've managed the portfolio.
Yeah. In fact, we'll have a look at how the portfolio, how much we've actually managed to give to charity since 2009 when the show began. But that's going to be towards the end of the program. But let's start with the statistics, because what we do at this time of year is always have a retrospective look at how we performed. And it's a good discipline as a trader to actually do this, I suppose, to have a look back. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's once yearly. But show us some of those stats, because it's always quite nice to round off the year with these.
Yeah, I must say I always enjoy doing these look-back reviews and sort of unpacking or summarizing all the statistics of how we've done. It's kind of a nice summary for us to see whether we've hit the spot or not. So there's a really sort of a snapshot of how this has been this year. So we've recorded 46 shows of Traders Corner for 2015. During that time, we've traded 31 times, which is quite a lot compared to previous years. We've usually done sort of in the mid-20s in terms of the number of trades. So we've done a few more trades this year. We've been a little bit more active. 17 of those trades were winners, and 14 of those were losers. So an okay win-to-loss ratio, although not as good as I always strive to. And we'll talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, okay. Because you do strive, I think, more for a 60-40 balance.
I certainly try for that, yeah. 65-35 actually is what I try for, but it's not always as easy as, it's easier said than done sometimes. Yeah. Nevertheless, we've managed a total return for the year of 42.5%. So I'm very happy with that, notwithstanding the fact that our win-to-loss ratio hasn't been quite as good as I would have liked. I still think the return has been excellent this year.
And as far as a histogram is concerned, because this is quite a nice way of viewing it visually, just talk us through that slide.
Yeah, well, this tells quite a nice story here, and it tells an interesting story. Just to explain the way this works, along the bottom axis here, you've got the names of all the different trades that we did throughout the year, and then you've got on the left-hand axis here, you've got anything above the zero line, that's percentage of capital that we gained. Below the line is percentage of capital lost. Now, every trade that we do on the show, we take a certain amount of risk up front, and we accept how much of the portfolio we're potentially willing to lose. And you can see that the red bars on this histogram over there represent the potential or the risk that we were willing to assume on each trade. Never do we risk more than 2% of the capital that we have at our disposal, and a lot of the time we've only risked only 1% of our capital. Then the green bars are the result of every trade. So once the trade is closed out, we look at it and say, right, did we make a profit or did we make a loss? If we made a profit, well, then the bar is above the line, and we reflect that as a percentage of capital that we gained on the portfolio. If we incurred a loss, then those bars are created by a green bar to the downside. And the ideal is that you want a histogram that's got lots and lots of these tall green bars to the upside so that it looks like the New York City skyline. And then you want short, stubby little blocks to the downside, showing that your losses were small on a relative basis. So nice big winners, small losers. Now, as you can see, this year, I mean, we've had quite a few nice winners over there, but it's very interesting to look at this on an average basis. Our net average loser, if we took all our losing trades together and averaged them out, we lost minus 1.25% of our capital on our losers on average. And our winners, we gained exactly 3% on average. So 3% of capital is what we managed to add to our portfolio on each of the winning trades on average. And of course, there were a couple of outliers here. You can see somewhere we made 6-7% of capital on individual trades. What's also interesting to note, however, though, is look at the distribution of the gains and how it's played out for the year. I mean, that circled area there really represents the first half of the year. And you can see the first half of the year was very good to us. And I remember sitting here doing the review at the end of June, and we were up 32.5% for the year to date to June. And we were all excited and saying maybe we could double that for the year. Now, of course, it hasn't been that easy. The second half of the year has been a much more difficult time of the year to trade, and our results have not been nearly as good. So the bulk of our profits were made in the first half of the year, and the latter half of this year, it's been a lot more patchy. You can see our winners have been much smaller on average, and we've had quite a few more losing trades this year. And also the amount of risk that I was taking on individual trades in the second half of the year actually was less than what I was typically taking in the first half of the year, implying that I was a little bit more cautious and a bit, I suppose you could say, fearful of losses, I guess. And as a result, our returns in the second half of the year have not been nearly as good as they were in the first half of the year this year.
I mean, Garth, a critic of the show might say, well, in the first half of the year, we had easier and better markets. Yeah. The market was on a more defined trajectory upwards.
Yes.
Do you think that's fair? I mean, would you say that, yeah, okay? Or can you say, well, actually, we shorted a couple of times, even with a market going up. So,
yeah.
You've got to take a couple of factors into account.
Yeah. I think most of our shorts were done more in the latter half of the year. But you're right that the first half of the year was quite a nice trending market, and a trending market is much more easy to trade than a choppy market. And if you think about the latter half of this year, we've had a very, very vicious correction in August of this year, then a huge bounce, which surprised all of us in terms of its speed and its extent into October of this year. So I've found the second half of this year very volatile and quite a lot more difficult to trade. And it's definitely reflected in that histogram over there.
Okay, having said that, though, let's compare the portfolio against the top 40.
Well, yeah, so it's still an excellent performance. I mean, if you have a look now, this graph shows the 250,000 that we started with at the beginning of the year. The yellow line is our Traders Corner portfolio, and the blue line is if you had invested that 250,000 Rand into the JSE Top 40 Index. And you can see that right from the start of the year, we began to outperform the market quite nicely. And only really since about August, you can see that our portfolio has gone mostly sideways, and the all shares also gone pretty much sideways.
In fact, it actually looks almost as if it's tracked the all shares.
It's done a fairly similar performance to the all share, yeah. So, I mean, we're up 42.5% for the year to date. So our 250,000 Rand that we started with has grown to 356,000 Rand. So that's an excellent performance. The JSE Top 40 has only given you 5% return for the year to date. So if you had invested your 250,000 Rand in a Top 40 tracker, or say a Satrix 40 or something like that, you would have only been worth 264,000 Rand now. So we've outperformed the market by a massive margin this year. And I think that is something really that I'm quite proud of, even though it has been quite difficult in the latter half of this year. We've played good defense. We haven't allowed any of the losses to get out of hand, and we've managed to hold on to our gains in the second half of this year, which has been a good thing. So our outperformance is fantastic, and I'm very proud of that performance.
Yeah. I mean, when you stack it up like that, it certainly is a very worthy, I suppose, achievement. Yeah. Garth, well, talking about achievements, the goals that you set out for yourself this year, how do you think you've stacked up?
Yeah, we always put these goals out at the beginning of the year. So in this case, we put them out on the 13th of January and I said to the viewers, this is what you need to measure me by, and if we can achieve these goals or not. So, and they're typically always the same goals every year. So the first goal is I want to get 65% of my trades as winners, and we got 55% as winners. So I think a little bit behind the curve there, a little bit, we underachieved in that respect. Be that as it may, that's the statistic as it is. I'd like to obviously try and get closer to the 65% win rate next year, and we always strive for that. The second goal is that we need our winners to average or to be 3 times larger than our losers on average. Now, our average winner on this show this year was a total gain on capital of 3% versus the average loser of minus 1.25%. So we're getting close there. It's a little bit under 3 to 1, but not that far off. So I think we've done fairly well there, and it was helped by the fact that we did have a couple of fairly big winners in the beginning of the year. And then the final goal is that we need to be patient for high probability trades. And this talks to the point of not just trading for the sake of trading. I mean, obviously we come here every week. We're a TV show. We want this thing to keep active. But at the same time, I need to balance that against being, forcing trades on the portfolio. So it's a delicate balancing act. But 31 trades out of 46 shows, it shows that we were reasonably patient. We were quite active as well, but we certainly didn't overtrade the portfolio. So I think, by and large, we did quite well to wait for high probability setups this year.
In fact, as you said maybe a little bit earlier, you traded more than in some of the other years that we've been running this portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. The market did dish up quite a few opportunities this year. And obviously in the second half of the year, fewer of those were winners for us. But nevertheless, there were plenty of opportunities for us to try and work at.
Garth, okay, so I mentioned in other shows. So we started the show in 2009.
Yeah.
How's it actually done? And I mean, how much have you been able to ratchet up and give to charities?
Well, yeah, so this is the performance since 2009. We started this show 6.5 years ago, and there you can see the annualized performance for each of the years since we began the portfolio. 2009 was actually a very good year because we only ran the show for about 4 months. We started in August of 2009, so a 25% return in 4 months was very good. 2010 and 2011 were 2 of the toughest years that I can ever remember having traded, and you can see the performance there. 2010 wasn't a great performance. 2011 with plus 20% was still quite good, actually, in a very, very tough year. And then since then, 2012, 13, 14, 15, we've actually really managed to make it rain, if you like. Good performances there between 40 and 50, excess of 50% in some cases. So by and large, it's been a very good performance, and we've certainly outperformed the market in each of the last 4 years by quite a handsome margin.
Yeah, and certainly what you've been able to give to charity has actually been a considerable sum.
Yeah, that's right. I'm very pleased that we've managed to give money to the charities each and every year, and we continue to support the 3 charities that we do that are up on the screen there now. And it's wonderful to be able to give back and use this sort of ultra-capitalist thing of trading to do some good. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, and in fact, you've been very loyal to your charities. The Gerald Fitzpatrick House is for the elderly, Princess Alice Adoption Home, and Ripple Reading, which was a charity that you introduced last year.
Yes, that's right. So the contact details for all of these charities are up on the screen. If there are any viewers that feel like they want to do the same as us and make a donation to any of these charities, you can get in touch with either of those charities there through the contact details that I've listed.
Great. Well done, Garth. We'll leave it there this evening. Garth McKenzie is, of course, founder and editor of Traders Corner.